All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble. Of course, we do have some chats coming through, so I believe that we will actually be live there. We've got a lot to cover today. The DOJ informing Trump that he's a target in the classified documents probe that they're conducting. This has multiple political ramifications, as we will get into. I did talk about it this morning, but I wanted to talk about it again in a little bit more depth, perhaps. And it's concerning. 250 years of civic precedents have been swept away. The political fallout from it, it might be a little bit more complex than the civic fallout, actually. So we'll talk about that. Also, Instagram, they have a vast network, assuming that the reports are true. I don't use Insta myself because, I've got a life. A vast network of pedophiles operating on the platform. Doesn't surprise me. Zuckerberg turns a blind eye to such things because, who knows what he's into? He's a little bit of a weirdo sometimes. Then the GOP has drifted, but Mike Pence is as conservative as ever. There is a fluff piece writ large from the New York Times, actually, about Mike Pence. We'll be getting into the meaning of what conservative actually means, and I think that people will understand Mike Pence is not actually conservative at all. Conserving what? Conserving his wallet, I suppose. Let's make sure that we're actually live before we begin and go further. Let's see. Yeah, we're live on Rumble. I see some chats. Big Ron B says peace. Salty Badlands, shall not mean shall not. Firebird, is this live or what? Yes, it is indeed live at this time. And Nick Ray 47, howdy Sticks. Well, howdy to you too, partner. Get down there on the OK Corral down there with them cattle. We've got lots of good shit going on today. We got other stuff to cover too. I'm going to rehash the Cornell West bit a little bit more mildly, maybe, than the new tech exclusive that I made this morning. I can't, degenerate into ebonics on a video that's also live on YouTube, even though I'd like to, and you should be able to, for comic effect. Rusty Shackelford. I'm from the same Iowa town as Sam Brinton. Parents were super religious, and his dad beat him. Did he hit him too hard or not hard enough? Yeah, bad upbringing can cause a person to snap and, be weird. At least he hasn't killed anyone. He just steals people's luggage and then proceeds to hold press conferences wearing the stolen luggage. On 3 different occasions, he's stolen parcels that we know of. So my only problem with that, it's not with Sam Brinton being a klepto, generic kleptomaniac, cross-dresser. Okay, that's a little bit weird, but it doesn't matter to me. The thing that matters about the Sam Brinton case was that he was working in a decent role at the Department of Energy. And so that shows that the Biden administration has no vetting process in place for people's psychoanalysis when it comes to potentially accessing classified documents. Verona 7881, how you doing? Very well, thank you very much. And yourself? Brinton has 2 master's degrees. What did he master in? Baiting? Anyway, we'll be talking about all of this and much, much more. Just a second here, though. Make sure those last tabs actually loaded. Oh, and the Eurozone. We slipped into a recession over on this side of the pond, actually, as of the other day. So you can await the United States probably following suit. It's very likely, in my opinion. Yeah, just something's goofy here. Okay, maybe it's not goofy. Never mind. Anyway, before I begin, I did want to point out again, there is a pinned comment at the top if you're watching this video on YouTube, and the link is in the description cross-platform, so YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter. If you haven't gotten a copy already, I do appreciate it if you'd get a copy of the gun rights debate, How to Win It, trying to buff up the militia with various pointers on how to debate people that don't like the idea of self-defense and the right to keep and bear arms. It's gotten a huge reception so far, keeping in mind, of course, if you do buy a copy, if you leave a rating on Amazon, it is exceptionally helpful. A rating is worth 5 sales. So, if you've gotten a copy and you haven't left one, I do ask that you do so. I'm not telling you what that rating has to be because that's actually against Amazon's TOS, but it would be nice. It would be a good gift to me. Think of the children, specifically mine. She needs diapers and shit. You got to have money for that. Anyway, we'll be going through lots of stuff here. We'll start right out with the news. Now that I've emoted a little bit. Justice Department informs Trump he is target in classified documents probe. Sources say. As with this morning, I do want to point one thing out. While it is likely that this is true, and while it's likely that an indictment from the DOJ is actually forthcoming in the coming weeks, which is politically inconvenient for multiple parties, Trump not being actually one of them, while it's likely, we will take it with a grain of salt. There's a chance that the report is bogus. Because the unnamed sources could be some janitor, quite literally, that crawled into the into the phone booth and called into CNN and the Wall Street Journal and said, "Hey, I've got a scoop for you." And then they ran with it because they're like, "Oh shit, a major scoop." Well, we don't want to be left behind. We'd rather be the ones breaking the news than the ones replicating the news because that's how we make money. While it's a 90% chance that they will actually be crazy enough to indict Donald Trump, therefore, there's a chance that they don't. And of course, the fact that they've named him as a target in a probe doesn't necessarily mean that they actually indict him at all. It just means that they've done him the courtesy of telling him, hey, you are named in this probe, so we're just letting you know that you've been named in a federal probe through the DOJ. There's a chance that they come out and we end up getting an impromptu presser at some point saying, no, you didn't do anything wrong. We don't have any evidence of it. I hesitate to believe that because what I believe is happening is that they're not confident that they can honk their way through the 24 election. They're worried that Trump will amalgamate enough support among independents and or there might be a spoiler candidate, Cornell West, we'll be talking about him later, that the left cannot plausibly sell to the American people that Biden has been reelected. Because they're worried about that, they're taking ultra draconian steps. The first is with Alvin Bragg, of course, months ago, with that non-scandal and the multiple felony charges that are normally misdemeanors. They're meaningless. That was step number one. That already broke 250 years of civic precedence in the United States. Because of the fact that they're willing to breach that precedence, I have a feeling that they intend to dogpile Trump with as many charges as possible, including possibly charges from Georgia, not even the DOJ's charges here with the classified documents, in order to bog him down. This will increase his support among Republicans, in my opinion. The first indictment didn't do anything to him that wasn't positive. He gained about 10 points of support, actually, shortly thereafter. What they're looking forward to, though, I think, is they realize they can't do what they normally do and rig the Republican primaries. And normally the Dem and Republican primaries, by the way, everyone, are rigged. They are rigged in favor of the establishment candidate. The idea for the uniparty is that if you have Obama v. Romney or something like that, or Bush v. Kerry, it doesn't matter who wins. You can have a totally fair national election because it literally is just nothing more than bread and circus. The people that are running on the mainline platforms against one another are both part of the same uniparty. Doesn't matter if Bush or Gore wins, they're the same thing. Bush v. Kerry, who cares? McCain v. Obama, who cares? Obama v. Romney, who cares? It isn't until 2016 that they get flummoxed. The problem is that Donald Trump had tricked them out by running effectively never announced campaigns on a couple of occasions prior. He had said, well, maybe I'll run against Obama. I think that I'll half file the paperwork and tell everyone I'm probably running. I'll generate a bunch of buzz, and then I drop out. And I think that the uniparty genuinely believed that his idea was just to sell books and steaks and get people to go to his properties. Oh my God, it's no longer just businessman Donald Trump. It's magnate and presidential candidate Donald Trump. And so they'd buy his books, et cetera, et cetera. I think they expected him after he lost Iowa to Ted Cruz narrowly to drop out. And he fainted as though he was going to do so. By the time Super Tuesday rolled around, it was too late to stop him. They tried the best that they could, and ultimately they failed. Because he had wasted their time up through pretty close to the general election, only a few months later that effectively began, they did not have time to honk on the election. In 2020, of course, they did have time. They had 4 years in order to set things up, to make sure that there was a pandemic going on, honk, honk. And to use that as an excuse for mail-in ballots, et cetera. By the way, they are trying to honk Texas right now with the Paxton ordeal. In my opinion, if Donald Trump is indicted by the DOJ, a few things happen. First and foremost, many independent voters will realize that it's persecutorial and that it's a witch hunt. They're going to be bombarded by legacy media propaganda to spin it as, well, Trump's finally going to get his day in court, his justice, his comeuppance. A lot of them, I think, as independent voters, more intelligent than partisan voters as an aggregate, they're more likely to see through it. Number two, it will peel back the last facade, the last veneer that there's any sort of equality and non-duality within the U.S. so-called justice system. And people should be more concerned about that. Now, it won't touch Dem voters, Biden core voters, leftists, etc. They'll maintain their cognitive dissonance. Other people in the country, I don't think, do. And the next possible step is that they actually force Trump to run a presidential campaign while under house arrest. I don't think that they can justify putting him in prison because of the legal constraints of the Secret Service having to be around him 24/7, but they can put him under house arrest. And there was an article the other day, very prescient, by the way, if it culminates in that direction, saying, well, Donald Trump may go to the GOP debates with an ankle monitor on. If that happens, Donald Trump would be well warned that the best possible way to react is to show it off in front of the crowd. Hey, look at this piece of jewelry that the taxpayers funded for me. I kind of like it. It makes beeping noise and stuff. Be as hyperbolic as possible. Be flippant about it. Be over the top and say, look, this is obviously a witch hunt. It's obviously persecution. You know it. I know it. Even the Democrats know it. They just don't care. Let's fucking, reelect Donald Trump, which I think would be a good idea, as a flipping of the bird to the establishment. If the DOJ, which is currently under the command of a Democratic administration, is willing to go that far, then they're willing to go even further. Now, there is no further constraint on the abuse of federal and state power in the United States. And people have to put that genie back in the bottle right quick. Otherwise, we are effectively ceding our republic entirely. So that would be my warning to people. I will be standing with Trump. At this point, nothing is going to change my mind. There's no one else viable within the field that I could consider palatable. Vivek Ramaswamy is a distant second in my mind, and he's got his own problems and is averaging at about 3.5 points. So yeah, he's down there. He's around almost as good as Nikki Haley. So take that for what you will. We'll talk about Pence and Christie and all these other fucking morons and their stupid overtures, leading off their campaigns as well. It's going to be a fun election. There will not be any boredom in this election. That I can guarantee you. The Great Scalzini, morning from a smoky northeast U.S. Yes, I heard about the Canadian wildfires being blamed on climate change. Wildfires never occurred before humankind existed. Generalissimo Liberty, thank you for doing what you do. You're very welcome, and thank you for the donation. The Patriot Cairo, the Biden crime family could commit murder on live TV and the Dem machine would cover for them. Let's go, big guy. Yeah, which is funny because the old colloquial adage, which Trump coined, was, I could shoot a person on, 5th Street or something like that. And, people would still cheer for me or something to that effect. He was being hyperbolic when he said that. The irony is that for the unipartyists, it's actually true. Ashley, Muhammad loves the gays, didn't you know? Yeah, we talked about that this morning. The LGBTQ plus MAP people that use Instagram, apparently, we'll talk about that in a moment, are embracing the concept that Muhammad, Islamic prophet, that he was woke, that he encouraged diversity and ESG and liked gay people. I pointed out that this is not doctrinally at least the case. Skate Betty, how do crazies go through the forest? The psychopath. Joe, love you, Sticks. Trump's comment that Cuomo handled COVID better than DeSantis was super cringy. Yeah, but it also is meant to get DeSantis hot under the collar. It's political posturing. You can read it like a book. Tony Martinez, the Don, will prevail. He is very likely to be the Republican nominee, again, barring a health incident or being outright disqualified by the party or by the FEC in some way. Didi Cortez, received my 3 copies of your gun rights debate work for myself and friends. Thank you for sifting through legacy media tripe so I don't have to. 7 years of love from Colorado. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I hope that you like the work. Peter is my first name. We don't hear about the swing voters anymore. I wonder why. How did politicians courting the swing voters end? Well, in a primary, you don't want to court the swing voters. Normally, what you do is you court the center of the party ideology, then you get nominated, then you snap back to the center. very few exceptions, Donald Trump actually being one of them. He always actually rode that center road. It's just that the Uniparty cast him off as being exceptionally far right, which was not actually the case. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. Hello, Anton. I saw your Biltong picture that you sent me this morning. I like to see that. Vincentius 1959 on Rumble. Greetings. A couple of weeks back, you made a comment about bored boomers trolling behind the keyboard. You inspired me to hone my trolling skills. Thanks, SF. You're very welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone should troll. We need a less polite world. You should be polite in real life. Online, you should be a hellion. It's more fun, keeps people on their toes. Hopefully, you can break the balls of all the special snowflakes out there who think that they shouldn't be criticized. Next news story. Instagram algorithms connect vast network of pedos seeking illicit images. I don't know if I can even use that word actually on YouTube because some people have been banned before for exposing other people for various high crimes and misdemeanors, so we won't get too deep into that. According to researchers now, with researchers, again, we take a grain of salt, just like we do with the legacy media. Okay, your research shows that there's a vast network. What proportion of it is bots and stuff like that, or honeypots, actually, like FBI honeypots trying to entrap people? Well, that's good. You know, one of the few things that law enforcement does properly is catching people out trying to be perverts or something like that. That being said, it would not surprise me at all if this story is fundamentally true. So apparently there are a bunch of people, and I'm not even going to repeat the hashtags, and you probably, for legal reasons, shouldn't even look at them because might get you on a watch list. They are in the article, but caution, maybe, just to be clear, that people are looking up illicit imagery of minors on Instagram. This would not surprise me. The internet has been filled with that sort of filth for a very long time. This isn't a new thing. It appears that Instagram is simply a place where people have congregated for it because their algorithms actually support the content. And that's really the scandal that they're facing right now is not the fact that the material is there, because it exists on other places. It exists on Twitter, on YouTube, etc. Most of the time, those sites crack down on it. When they're alerted to the fact that there's stuff there that is potentially illegal, they crack down. They crack down algorithmically. They ban a bunch of accounts. They fiddle with their algorithms to try to block the material from appearing in search, related videos on YouTube, etc. They do something about it. Instagram appears to have promoted the material. Now, despite the fact that their algorithm promoted the material, allegedly, again, I'm not going to make an Instagram account just to go and search for illicit material because I'm not fucking batshit. In most cases, they try to tackle it. With Instagram, it appears that they were promoting it. Unknowingly, apparently, they were just completely oblivious to the fact that the material was there. Our site doesn't have any such material on it. It's a problem for other sites, says Mark Zuckerberg. Really believable. They will now hide behind Section 230, despite willfully violating it, because they do act as a publisher, because they collate and curate material on a regular basis. Try going to Insta and having a political opinion outside of the neoliberal orthodox. See what happens. You're either demoted in the material you're making or you're banned. Meanwhile, things that are actually genuinely illegal at the very highest level, well, apparently they slipped under their radar. Yeah, this is really believable, and it makes a whole lot of sense. This is why we desperately need to reform Section 230. Section 230 should be understood to delineate between a platform and a publisher. A publisher is responsible for everything posted on the site, but they may do whatever they want. You can moderate it to your heart's content. You can curate it to your heart's content, editorialize whatever you want. You're a publisher. A platform is effectively arguing that we cannot moderate all of the material on our site. This was the purpose of 230. Sites had grown too large to moderate effectively. We don't have the manpower. Even with AI systems, they don't have the means. We cannot moderate and police all content for everything under the sun, so we cannot be held responsible for what's posted here. It's impossible for us to remove all the copyrighted material. It's impossible for us to get every illegal image that's posted on this hosting site, and so we can't do it. 230 was meant as a shield for them to protect US-based tech sites so that they could continue to operate by saying, okay, you're not legally responsible for that content. Then why are these sites, Instagram being one of them, moderating content for pedestrian political opinions, things about medical topics, things about certain elections? Oh, wait, I can talk about that on YouTube. Oh, it's the 2020 election, the shenanigans that went on in there. Banning people left and right for that, diverting resources that could be used to take care of this, to prevent 12-year-olds from being trafficked by gang members, to prevent little kids from being victimized. Apparently, that wasn't Instagram's priority, and so now they have one hell of a goddamn problem on their hand, but it is not a legal problem. It is a problem of public relations. I would encourage people out there, unless you have no choice, you have an Instagram fan page or something because you're a creator, you should delete your Instagram account. By the way, why the fuck are some of you still on Facebook as well? Why the hell do you even fucking use it? To talk to the two boomers that are still active on the site? Fuck Mark Zuckerberg. Let him crash and burn and burn that patch of forest so that new growth can come up. So there's more leeway, more room in the market. Instagram is a facade, a bunch of bullshit. Facebook's even worse. Meta has fallen through as far as its VR systems and so forth. There's no reason for any of these things to exist. Let them starve to death. Let them go completely under. I haven't used Facebook in years and years, and I've never been active on Instagram. Because yes, my idea of a good day is I take pictures of the things that I'm seeing anyway, put a caption on there, and then constantly live update people about everything that I eat, every flower I see, and every interesting building in the neighborhood. Wow, what an exciting life. Now, I think that it's a boring life. I think that when people are hooked to their phones 24/7, and I see it all the time, somebody's bent down over their phone, they've got their wireless earbuds in, they're tuning out the world. They're not even away. If they're talking to someone, it's somebody 100 miles away. What a fucking boring life. What a fucking loser. I consider that to be pathetic. No, when I go out, I've got my phone with me, but I'm not looking at it unless I need to check the time or there's an incoming call, which I assume is probably my wife. She needs something at the store that she didn't tell me she needed and it's not on the list before or something like that. It's the only purpose to it. As far as Instagram, their main problem is that it appears, according to this particular research, that they unwittingly promoted illegal material. Now, it should be a cut and dry legal case, but because of 230 being perverted beyond all recall, they won't get in any trouble in it unless people stop using their fucking site. Don't use Meta. You don't need Facebook. You don't need Instagram. Well, technically speaking, unless you're doing content creation, you don't need an account on half the sites you probably do. Cheese. Christie is in. Ghost Politics is supporting Chris Christie. Thoughts? Many Andy Six references on his podcast of late. Oh, he's still talking about that? I don't know. I haven't watched his show. Chris Christie has zero chance. He's a petulant fat baby. AP1S2K, kick some butt today, Pix. You got this. Also, can you just cuss a lot in your into voice sticks? I feel that would be good medicine. I don't know what you mean. You mean in this voice, intro voice? Motherfuck, cunt, cocksucker. Samui Osugi, take my $1 from the Philippines. Hashtag Clank Nation. Thank you very much. Tasmanaut. The UAP UFO thing is really heating up recently. What is your take on the drip feed disclosure? PSYOP, genuine happening? Tell us, oh Clankin' one. There are no aliens in the freezer, I'm sad to tell you. If there are any UFOs in the sky, they're probably government craft. They have nothing to do with little green men. I do not believe that extraterrestrials visit our world because our world is probably poisonous to them, thanks to all the bacteria and pollen and the highly oxidizing atmosphere. Not a very hospitable place to live unless the life has evolved on it to begin with. The great Scalzini, Bush neocon Republicans think they're relevant? At that point, might as well grab the Jinko shorts out of the closet. Jinko jeans and 9-inch nails, the band. Nothing personnel, kid. The Patriot Cairo, if there's human scum, George Soros qualifies for it. Absolutely. Sigil Stone. Porn sites had to clean up a lot of underage material too after credit cards started dropping them. Twitter too before Musk. Who runs those in Instagram again? Noticing pattern identifies. Yeah, it's almost like they ignored the problem until it became a PR nightmare and didn't have a problem with it beforehand. AB1S2K. Also, I am the GOAT of 5-axis machining. Interesting. I don't know what that is, but nice. Next news story, we have a fluff piece, and it comes from the New York Times. Now, you'd think, of course, it's about Biden or maybe even RFK Jr. No, it's about Mike Pence. Yes, they are trying to astroturf Mike Pence as the common sense conservative alternative to all of this MAGA nonsense. The GOP has drifted, but Mike Pence is as conservative as ever. Keep in mind, again, this is the New York fucking Times. The polls say Mr. Pence, who is set to announce his 2024 candidacy on Wednesday, of course is a couple days dated, has little chance, but he is driven by faith instead. Yes, he has so much faith. Jesus, Jesus. I was pointing out the other day, Mike Pence is not actually a Christian at all. He doesn't have a moral bone in his body. He's entirely self-serving. He's trying to establish in-group preference. This is what grifters do. You say, there's a group that I'm part of, and I'm speaking for, by the way, and that's the in. You're part of that in-group. Everything without is out. So let's build a wall around our little echo chamber, and I'm your king, and you give me, money, basically, to protect you, to promote our values as a people, as whites, as blacks, as women, as men, as some Tumblr gender or something like that. Tall people, short people, rich people, poor people. In Mike Pence's case, Christianity. I'm going to rule the land in the name of Jesus Christ. It's basically his campaign slogan so far. His real slogan is just MAGA with more steps. Same with Christie. Same with them all. There is no deviation from that. Every single one of them basically is replicating MAGA, but then using a slightly different slogan. You may have noticed that as well. So yeah, with Mike Pence, he doesn't have a chance. That's number one. Number two, what is he actually seeking to conserve? I would ask, literally, conservatives post first-term Reagan. First-term Reagan was good. Second-term Reagan, mediocre at best. And then you have a bunch of bullshitters, basically, up until Trump. During that period, what did conservatives actually conserve? Nothing. They pissed everything away. Courts had to get involved. The only shining grace of that entire period were things like D.C. Heller, McDonald, Chicago, and decisions like that upheld elements of the Constitution through the Supreme Court. Everything else was bullshit. Incarnations of Congress led by weaklings. Presidents who were weaklings. Bill Clinton was a weakling. George W. was a weakling. Herbert Walker was a weakling. All of these people. Obama was a weakling. Biden's a weakling. Donald Trump is the only one that stands out as having had common sense during his term, which is another reason why I support having a second term of Donald Trump. Whether that happens or not becomes immaterial at some point. If he's the only one worth voting for, I know who I'm voting for. I'd love go through this friggin' article. Again, link in the description. It's archived. Talking about Mike Pence in, glowing praise for the most part. Talking about the fact that he's tied with Trump and he has to work past that. But he's a real conservative. He's principled. What principles do you think he has? As VP, he was effectively a no-show for the most part, and at the last minute threw everyone under the bus. So, Ozzy's Robots. I bought a website called Alphadrome, which is essentially an open forum created for collectors. 25 years ago, I asked GoDaddy to remake it with new tech. They refused, calling it social media. It's a very interesting story. Virgil Walker, do you believe more communities should come together and form local militias? Yes, I believe that every community should have a neighborhood watch, etc. People should try to get together with their neighbors, undercut the system by using tax-free trade among your neighbors for goods and labor as well, especially foodstuffs. Old Mrs. Smith loves to garden tomatoes. Old Mr. Jones over there is really good at canning. Well, you can probably make some good tomato sauce. Everyone puts in their shares on paper. You have a ledger. You organize it. You have a local meeting, a couple times a year, and that's all you have to do. And it'd be fun, too. You can have a picnic or some shit. Oscar S117, salutation from Florida man. Keep up the good work. Florida man bends dog over and rapes it. Florida man dies after eating 10 pounds of nachos. Probably real headlines at this point. Just saying, Vermont man is going to replace Florida man, though. And it's usually not actual Vermonters that are making the headlines. You may have noticed that from Burlington and WCAX lately, if you keep up to that at all. Next news story. The Readout blog Yes, MSNBC has done it again. We have, of course, Joy Reid. She's a black female. There's a reason why she was particularly tasked with this story. It's about Cornell West. Of course, Cornell West is a pseudo-intellectual socialist, complete wokeoid. He's a far leftoid, and he's running for the presidency because there were no Democrats in the race that he wanted to endorse. He had endorsed Bernie the last couple of times. But now he's wandered off the plantation, and they're chastising him and saying that you better get your butt back here, boy, because, you know, it's dangerous if you wander off the plantation. Just ask many of Hillary Clinton's personal friends. Cornell West's leftist presidential bid has right-wing DNA. The people framing newly announced presidential candidate Cornell West as a leftist seem to be lazily sanitizing his recent history, and voters deserve better. Yeah, his recent history, like endorsing Bernie. His recent history, like endorsing Bernie in the race before that. His recent history by writing several books about woke topics. His recent history of continuously goddamn peddling socialism over and over and over like a broken record. More welfare. We need this, and we need universal health care. We need to limit military spending, but every other spending rises in its place. Everything should be more expensive. Fuck the rich. And screw white people is basically Cornell West's platform. In what realm of reality can we cast this as right-wing? Well, you can't. I know exactly why they're doing this, though, and MSNBC is doing this for a specific reason. Their audience is mostly leftoids, especially some younger ones that haven't figured out the internet apparently yet and still cling to their television set for some unknown post-nostalgia, some retro bullshit or something, the modern-day second-wave hipsterism of our era. I know why they're doing this. They're trying to kneecap Cornell West because they're afraid that since he's running on a third-party platform, he may actually be in the general election. If he takes so much as 500,000 votes away from Joe Biden by being a leftist candidate, like more visible than the non-existent Green Party, for example, and he siphons enough votes from Biden, especially in the right places, he could tilt the election. The problem is that if enough votes are siphoned, it's impossible for them to honk enough ballots up in order to make it look plausibly like Biden was reelected. You may end up with a funny situation, and I've talked about this twice before. For those of you on the stream, I'll reiterate this. You could end up with a weird situation in which Trump, with an ankle monitor running under house arrest, ends up beating Joe Biden because of a socialist so-called intellectual, because he siphoned enough votes to make it implausible that they could swing enough states. You could end up with that situation. It'd be hilarious. It's an outlier. It's not likely to happen, but the fact that I'm even discussing the possibility makes me giddy. That's not the most likely outcome, but it's possible. As far as Cornell West, the idea that he's right-wing is something that Joy Reid and everyone else on the left never said until he launched his presidential bid. By the way, a microcosm of the treatment that Trump got. Nobody ever called Donald Trump racist, sexist, homophobic, or anything like that until he ran for the presidency. Cornell West is about to get the same treatment because, of course, as a pseudo-intellectual, he's got his bills paid. He gets his arm rubbing with politicians. He gets to pal around with Bernie Sanders and occasionally the unipartyists. He's got his six-figure salary. He's supposed to sit down, shut up, and say the same things over and over ad nauseum. He's not supposed to actually seek office without explicit authorization of the white liberals. And that's why they're angry. They're afraid he's going to burn down the plantation. They're afraid that he's going to light the hay bales in the massa shed on fire and that it'll catch, and it'll be a big problem for them in the general. Stone's Hexenhammer. I still think we could break bones together. Ozzy's Robots. My point is big tech won't host a forum where people can respond with comments. They called it like Facebook or Twitter. I say it's anti-competitive. I would agree. Now, there's been a worrying lack of comments and DM functionality on websites. You remember, YouTube used to have direct messages. For some of you that don't remember, they got rid of those years ago, and they never really gave a proper reason as to why. I have a feeling it was because people were sharing material out through DM, through various networks of a political nature that they wanted to stifle. Jack's Regret, are you learning Dutch with baby sticks? Yes, yeah, I can speak a little bit of basic Dutch. Mostly I can read it, though. My reading in Dutch is pretty good. It's difficult for me to understand what people are saying, though. Shinhwa, a couple guys said you'd only pinned my comment on a morning video because I'd previously donated to you. Certified first-time donation, nerds. Yeah, I haven't seen any super chats from you before, but I appreciate this one. No, I go through after I upload all of the videos, and I go through the ones that are on YouTube, and I pin comments. I always pin my own links to offsite in the first video that I upload, just to help share out, BitChute, Rumble, and so forth. But yeah, as far as the other ones, I pin whatever comments I see that I think are pinnable. They are worth pinning. That's the first time there's ever been a controversy over me pinning a comment, by the way, which I find very, very funny. Next news story. So Cornell West, they're trying to get him back on the Dem plantation, but he's wandered off. He's a slave runaway from the Elizabeth Warrens of the Democratic Party, and that's naughty. He's not supposed to be doing that. He's supposed to sit in his place and know it well. Do what you're told by your benevolent white liberal masters. Next news story. This was something that was brought up yesterday, actually, by a subscriber, and I looked through it and looked through the story. Nearly 30 children reported missing in Cleveland during first 2 weeks of May in extraordinary surge. By the way, that is considerably higher than normal for a city that in decline like Cleveland, with a shrinking, I believe, population, because who the fuck would want to live in Cleveland? I can't think of anyone that I've ever heard of that had a positive appraisal of the goddamn city, probably not without good reason. When you fly over Cleveland, for those who haven't, it looks dusty. It's all like a weird tan brown, like a dirty color, like it's never been cleaned, like it's perpetually dusty and smoggy, and there's residue on everything. It doesn't look like a very pleasant place. You look at the houses from above there, not much to look at either. No offense to anyone from Cleveland, but it's certainly not the sort of place that I would choose to settle in. Cleveland police said 27 kids have been reported missing between May 2nd and 16th, as Newburgh Heights Police Chief John Majoy warns that the disappearances have reached unprecedented levels in 2023. There's always peaks and valleys with missing persons, but this year it seems like an extraordinary year, Majoy, who serves as the board president of the Cleveland Missing Nonprofit Group, told Fox News. For some reason, in 23, we've seen a lot more than we normally see, which is troubling in part because we don't know what's going on with some of these kids, whether they're being trafficked or whether they're involved in gang activity or drugs. Well, I can give you two big reasons right now. Number one, gang activity has risen. You've got left-wing prosecutors all over the United States refusing to lock people up even for substantial crimes, letting them go, and they filter back out. Now, sometimes they're going to end up in a different place. I don't think that Cleveland has a revolving door prosecutor, but it's not entirely without precedence that somebody from an area where there is one might say, well, I'll get out while the getting's good. Oh, we've got an affiliate over in Cleveland. I'll check it out. I'll go and do shit there. That's number one. Number two, I hate to tell you, but there might be a spree kidnapper on the loose, a serial killer. When you have this kind of spike, they could be related. What the police should be doing is looking at the demographics of the kids that are going missing and seeing if there is a similarity between most of them. If they find that there's a similarity, it's probably a serial killer or a serial abductor, or a group of abductors possibly. Or maybe a gang that just does trafficking and they're going on a spree because they want more kids to pimp out or sell to the Republican-run sweatshop in Cleveland that is printing out the TikTok shirts or something like that. I'm sure that some of it's drugs, some of it's gangs, some of it's just routine disappearances. The kid fell in a canal and died, and you haven't found the body yet. The kid ran away from home. They're not in Cleveland anymore. That's possible, especially older teens, 16, 17. Unfortunately, though, if you have that considerable rise in the number of cases in a certain crime in a small geographic area, in a short period of time, they are probably linked. So they should probably be looking into whether did you let somebody out lately in the last year or so that had a prior history of abducting kids or something like that? You might want to look into them, do a welfare check, and make sure to check their basement double, because you could end up finding some gruesome remains there. It's a silent crime that happens right under our noses, he said. Well, of course. Yeah, mostly the abduction is going to have the van pulls up at 8 o'clock and somebody gets in and nobody gets out until they're in the factory zone or something. So the hope is that it's just statistical noise. The general idea, though, is that it's probably not. There's something linking these cases. So you may have a serial killer of kids or a serial molester, an Instagram user, in other words, probably with a TikTok, Somewhere in Cleveland. Now, they may or may not be in Cleveland proper. Why don't you map these cases out where the people were last seen, talk about the demographics, and then draw a map up and try to figure out what's going on? My bet is you'll find plenty of connections. Of course, they're not going to give that to the public. They'll try to cover it up so they can take the glory for catching the perp. Coincidences within crime are less likely than actual connections within crime. Just to be clear, Branch Covidian19, what do you think of Soros what do you think Soros' endgame is? Why does he feel the need to mold the world the way he wants when he's on death's doorstep? Old habits die hard. He's an egotistical power maniac. He's a war pig. Not a banned account. Will Trump help middle-class defense contractors? Yeah, probably. Help them by not starting another war. Not a banned account. We should rename human trafficking to slavery. Well, yeah, it is basically slavery. It's just not state-sponsored. Usually it's not, unless it's in a prison. Kilroy was here. To be completely fair, if you include the map in the LGBT plus amalgamation, much of the Muslim world would fit right in. Yeah, for cultural reasons, some of it would. Muhammad did marry a 9-year-old girl. It was a consummated marriage. Well, I mean, 6 when they were married, according to canon. Some people have tried to say it was actually 18. That appears to be revisionism. It's not evident from the Sahih Bukhari. So certainly it's not in the Sahih Muslim or anything like that. But when you're talking about things that were over 1,000 years ago, yeah, times change. Yes, believe it or not, people attempt to refine their philosophical views of the world over time. Cole Ross, Cleveland has a long history of missing kids. The most interesting cold case is the Amy Mihaljevic kidnapping and murder. Look it up. I'll have to look that up, yes. Yeah, but if you have a sudden spike, a significant one, there's probably a central reason for it. Ozzy's Robots. Do you think glowies co-opted the likes of Soros? I think Soros is a glowy, and he funds them very well. Yeah, we had to talk about woke Islam this morning. I'm like, the leftists are really on a fine line when they start perturbing the Islamic world with, please accept the gay people. Well, are you gonna have a pride parade in Riyadh or in Baghdad? You're gonna go over to Lebanon or Jordan. You're gonna go over to Amman or Beirut, and you're gonna have a pride parade. I would love to see the leftists try. Then they would see what suffering and pain really are. They would understand actual oppression as opposed to, people aren't buying Budweiser enough, and so they're victimizing us. Next news story. Unfortunately, the Eurozone slips into recession as revised data, shows 2 quarters of economic contraction. The 20 countries that use the euro, including the one I'm in currently, the Netherlands, fell into a mild recession. It could get worse around the turn of the year, although the broader European economy avoided the downturn. Well, it's, silver lining to every dark cloud, I suppose. You could have told me that we were in a recession here, considering that, the inflation is definitely high. I go to the store, I buy groceries, etc. Have to pay for gas, and so forth. Yes, the prices have soared out of sight. They are considerably higher than when I first arrived in the Netherlands. It's the same in the United States, although I would point out the Netherlands is worse off when it comes to the inflationary problem. It's worse than Bidenflation. That's going some. And now it's in a recession. So yeah, the economic growth is slagging off, despite the fact that you have significant inflation in member states. You've had mass investments, mass stimulus attempts. Despite all of the activity that the Eurozone has engaged in to try to prop things up, the growth is still negative. By the way, it was interesting. I remember at the beginning of this year, what was it? Oh, that's right. The UK's growth was stagnating. They blamed Brexit. They said, well, if you had only not left the European Union, everything would be hunky-dory. It was lockdown-based, but that was their claim. Are they going to say the same thing here? If only the Eurozone countries hadn't been part of the Eurozone, it would things would be magically better. Well, probably not. You'd probably still be in the same fucking shit that you're in. It doesn't surprise me that there's been a recession. There's one more thing I wanted to mention here. This is, of course, a CNN article. And there's one line in here that I thought was interesting. A recession is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction, which is true. There's nothing wrong with that inclusion. What did they not apply this to last year? The U.S. economy. Instead, they had piece after piece coping with the copium and dickering about the meaning of what what a recession was. Well, it's not actually, that's not an agreed upon term. It's not 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. It's that plus any of a number of metrics that hadn't quite been met. And so they said the U.S. is not officially in a recession. By the way, the U.S. growth was down considerably more than a decline of 0.1. It was more like 0.5 or something like that. It was significantly steeper. But that wasn't a recession, according to CNN and other legacy media at the time. But with the Eurozone, according to U.S. media, because they don't have to ask cover for European governments, they ask cover for Biden on economic news explicitly. Darcy was bragging about this early last year. For them, that wasn't a recession. This you can admit right up front it is. How very interesting. Different strokes for different stories. The Defamation League. Hey, Sticks, have you thought about starting the conversation-based podcast similar-ish to Timcast? Could be cool. Yeah, I've thought about that. An audio podcast of some sort. Jimmy B. I'm thinking about creating an I've Got Monkeypox clothing line and pitching it to Target. Wish me luck. Yeah, just do Teespring. They'd probably accept that. Not a bad account. When will Trump finally make anime waifus real? I guess they're already real in some people's minds. That's about as good as it'll get for them. I see people arguing over Cornell West and his political views, actually, in chat. And the final news story. This comes from home, back in Vermont. Paulette, not that far from Rutland, actually. Town asked judge to issue arrest warrant for Slate Ridge owner. After being unable to enter Daniel Banyai's property on June the 1st, Paulette town officials asked the state environmental court to order his arrest while a federal judge threw out his new lawsuit. Photo by Glenn Russell, a Vermont digger. When Paulette town officials arrived at Daniel Banyai's, this is Slate Ridge. This is a training camp over in Paulette. I'll give the backstory in a minute. Banyai, the owner of the controversial firearms training facility, was nowhere to be found. Now, I'll give you the long story short. Daniel Banyai and the people there at Slate Ridge set up a training camp for firearms, and they were bothering nobody. There were altercations with some of the neighbors over noise complaints and other things. Nobody ever had a case in court that went through, though, so it's bullshit. The town and the state realized what Banyai is doing there is perfectly legal. You are allowed to fire firearms on your own property. He's not part of a metropolitan area. He's out in the boonies, basically, on a giant chunk of land. A lot of trees, not a lot of people, and people are running around shooting guns all day. That's not illegal. They couldn't do anything about it, although they have actually passed a law which is explicitly unlawful in every way because it's explicitly to persecute this one particular individual. It's as plain as day. I can get into that some other time. Vermont's latest stupid round of fucking anti-gunnery. There's a reason why I wrote the gun rights debate book. By the way, again, link in the description, cross-platform. You should get a copy, pinned at the top on YouTube. Anyway, they realized they couldn't do anything legally about the training camp because firing guns is fine. Doing target shooting with your friends is fine. People can do that if they want on their own property. So what did they do? They went to an environmental court in the state of Vermont to say he has built buildings on his property and they are not properly permitted. He doesn't have a permit to build a lean-to shack on his property for training purposes because, of course, if you're going to do urban warfare training, you're going to set up a bunch of structures. Of course, if you fill them full of holes, at some point it'll fall out of permitting anyway. It'd be an unlivable structure, and the state of Vermont will come in and fuck with you with that too. You have to upkeep the structure properly. I believe you also have to have electricity and water hooked up to them if it's a standing structure. Now, one thing I would tell Banyai is that you could take these buildings, dismantle them, reassemble them on blocks, on cement blocks. Under technicalities, I believe under Vermont state law and in most municipalities, it's no longer considered an inhabitable structure. At that point, I think you probably get away with it. So you avoid, the over $100,000 fine there for having buildings that are not being lived in or used for any purpose other than fucking training, which is bullshit by the state of Vermont. But now they're saying that the structures haven't been removed. And they trespassed on his property to go check on it and to go hunt him down. And he's effectively absconded. We're not sure exactly where he is. And they're still persecuting him. This is a clear-cut case. The legal workaround through the environmental courts, number one. Number two, the retaliatory efforts by the state with regards to training camp laws that were literally passed just because Slate Ridge existed, goes far beyond the pale in persecuting the militia. This is the activities of the militia. The ability to train, and not have to do so by using a standing structure that costs $100,000 to build, filling it full of holes and destroying it in a couple of months, after which it's condemned and then the state comes in anyway, is clearly a right. The ability to do target shooting and so forth. At this point, I've made my decision, by the way, as an individual. When I return to the United States, I will not be resettling in Vermont. I'll be attempting to resettle in New Hampshire. Now, there'll be a time, of course, I'm in Vermont anyway. That's where a lot of my stuff is. My family's there. And of course, I'm not going to just wander off and say to my family, I'm back in the States. Bye, Mom. That's not going to happen. In the future, though, I do plan to relocate elsewhere. Probably to New Hampshire. It's where I was born. It's basically Vermont without this sort of stupidity and without, by the way, a sales tax. So things are a lot cheaper there. But now you've got Hampton Beach. Yeah, Ray's Seafood, by the way, is pretty fucking good. If you can get down that way at any time, get their seafood chowder. Tell them Stick sent you. You won't regret the purchase. I'm thinking of New Hampshire because it's similar weather, very slightly warmer in the southern side of the state. It's more convenient, lower cost of living. You don't have any anti-gunnery there. New Hampshire is what Vermont was 15 years ago at this point. It's actually safe to be there. It's got all of the pros of Vermont, basically, other than, you don't have Lake Champlain and therefore Champ or something like that. It's basically Vermont, but better. Why wouldn't you want to go to New Hampshire? There was a thread on 4chan the other night. Someone was saying they wanted to relocate to New England, actually. And I weighed in on that. They were saying, oh, which state should I move to? I said, well, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island aren't technically New England. Not as far as the New England feel itself, unless it's Western Massachusetts. That's not what you're getting. You're getting city. Connecticut, half of it is a suburb of New York. Massachusetts, a good third of the state is basically Boston and outlying areas. Rhode Island is densely concentrated and tiny, and nobody knows it exists. You're looking at basically Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Maine is boring. I hate to tell any Mainers out there, but your state is boring as fuck. Vermont used to be so great. When I was growing up, like in the 90s, Vermont was wonderful. 2000s, Vermont was wonderful. Then the Great Recession hit, crippled our state. Everything's been downhill since then. New Hampshire is a little bit different. New Hampshire is superior at this point to Vermont. I would rather be there in the Granite State, or the Free State, rather, than in the Green Mountain State. And I was born there anyway, so I can claim that I'm native to the state and nobody can have a problem with me. It's the same accent. If I'm on the Connecticut River side of New Hampshire, I sound more like the people there than on the western side of Vermont with the Hudson accent, by the way. Which people don't understand. Within states, you have different accents, actually. I got an old-timey Connecticut River accent. I'm one of them fucking hillbillies from the Connecticut River area, more like Bridgewater, Woodstock. Ain't nothing to do with Burlington and none of that shit. Simple Logic 90. Do you know what documents in question the DOJ is going after? I saw something yesterday saying they were Pentagon documents. We're not sure. There will probably never be disclosure on that, by the way. The Commander 248. Hey, Sticks, sent you an article about a food stamp scam in Michigan through Twitter. I've been sending you stuff for 2 months, but it doesn't seem to go through. Also, do you want articles archived? Archived if possible. I'll check through if you send me a DM as soon as possible. And it might be that you're on red, or it might be that you're being blocked out by Twitter entirely. It's impossible to tell. I'll have to look into it. Ozzy's Robots, whatever happened with the Dutch and French protests? The Dutch elected a bunch of people to the Tractor Party, so we're seeing what happens here. As far as France, I don't know. But they protest all the time anyway. The Patriot Cairo, snowflakes don't know how good they have it in the U.S. Try driving around Syria with a coexist bumper sticker. You'll be dragged away and never seen again. Yeah, exactly. The Defamation League. Why do you think we would win in a fight to the death? Biden or Feinstein? Biden would beat up Feinstein. At least he can stand, more or less. Tyson Clark, Sticks for Sarnia Mayor. The Defamation League. Oh, you asked again about Biden v. Feinstein. Yes, I think that Biden would actually beat up Dianne Feinstein. He would take her out behind the shed with a chain and treat her like fucking corn pop. Anyway, I'm going to go offline. It's been real. To the 4,000 people roughly watching live, it's been real. But I'm going to be making Tuscan soup tonight, a Tuscan bean soup with the white beans in it. And I've got some yummy bread on the side for that. I'm looking forward to it. It's a new recipe. Again, if you haven't already purchased a copy of The Gun Rights Debate, How to Win It, link in the description, cross-platform, pinned at the top of chat if you're on YouTube. I do ask that you get a copy. You know, number one, it helps me in my income. Number two, I didn't write it because I thought it was bullshit. I think that it can help you in helping to support the Second Amendment. And I want as many people to be as effective as possible. A vanguard of Second Amendment advocacy is what we need right now. Because states are ignoring Bruin, they're ignoring McDonald v. Chicago, they're ignoring legal precedent. They're in the state of Vermont, they're ignoring their own state constitution at this point with the latest round of gun control. Even Phil Scott, the rhino, pointed this out and said, I'm not going to sign my name to your gun control omnibus here because at least one component of it isn't even legal. That's going to be embattled real quick in the Vermont State Supreme Court, where, by the way, they will rule in favor of the gun control. I can guarantee that. It's cut and dry. They're anti-gunners. I'm just waiting for someone there to take it to a circuit court and overrule the state Supreme Court, which clearly has flipped its goddamn lid. So yes, if you would like a copy of that book, it is available. I'm going to be making soup later. I'm conking out at this point. I've done my job for the day. That's about all.